ha ha. So what are they? Discipleship definition: a spiritual experience in which one person influences another by sharing God-given truth. I got serious right there. Air conditioner went off. Yes, I can. A spiritual experience in which one person influences another by sharing God-given truth. Truth bomb. The goal of a one-on-one is to build a relationship that helps bring that student from where they are to one step closer to Jesus. One of the books that we had to read this summer, if you haven't read it, try to read it as soon as you get home, really quick. Wiki Church and the Circle Maker. Wiki Church is really, really awesome book. If you guys that are here with other campuses, write it down, read it. Don't hesitate. It's amazing. But one of the things it talks about in there is if you are a chapter ahead in the Bible of someone else, you can disciple them. Okay? Which a lot of times will mean you have something to say to a lot of people. God's impacted you and your life in different ways, and you have something to share with other people. So be encouraged by that. The fact that you're a sophomore opens up opportunities for you to disciple freshmen, for example. Some of your concerns may be about leading your peers, which could come into play with Stephen and Jeremy and John, who you guys are sophomores, potentially leading sophomores. Maybe people that are older. I don't know. That Stephen's there to help you with that and to balance that. But I just want you to be encouraged. It can happen. And you don't have to approach everything authoritatively, I have something to say to you today, you can lead people into conversation about God, and it will lead to discipleship. And so I just want to encourage you with that. So that's the goal. Why do we do one-on-ones? In the blanks, God uses people to influence our lives. Isn't that interesting? I think we always think about these experiences that we have with God. At least my background in church is experiencing God, which I think is incredibly important. But experiencing God happens in a one-on-one, talking about the heroes of the faith. I mean, that's how I feel. I feel really strongly about that. In fact, I think the formation that happens in those settings is often just as powerful and long-lasting as some of the things that maybe I would have valued more growing up. And so understand that people do, God does use people. And all you have to do is read the Bible a little bit, to know that. We are to imitate Jesus in all that we do. You guys know that Jesus did one-on-ones? Matthew 28:18-20, it says, Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. So Jesus didn't just say, go to church. He said, go and make disciples. And he expands on that, of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then he says, teaching them to obey everything that I've commanded you. And the other cool thing is he says, I'm with you on this. I'm with you always. Paul teaches us about generational discipleship. That's the blank there, generational. We are to pour into someone in such a way that they will in turn pour into others. You guys can see how that's happening now. We are to reproduce ourselves as core group leaders by the time we leave. 2 Timothy 2:2, and the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable men who will also be qualified to teach others. So let's break that verse down before you turn the page. Let's find the groups of people that are mentioned in this verse. Okay? So give me one. Okay, so Paul. Do you know who this was written to? Timothy. Okay. Now what? Okay, let's skip that one. Reliable people. And then what? So in one very small verse, one sentence, Paul is talking about 4 groups of people, 4 generations of people that one message is moving through. That's what we're doing right here. You're here for 4 years, so you're going to have 4 generations. It's going to be pretty cool. Who do you do one-on-ones with? And this, don't get scared, but everyone should be met up with. Something that we're going to improve on this year, and I'm going to teach you a little bit more how to do it. As soon as you get names and contact info, immediately start hanging out with anyone who could potentially be in your core. So anyone is that blank. After your first core group, you and your co-leader need to formally coordinate who is meeting with who and divide based on relationship and interest. So in other words, be smart about it. If you have a good connection with somebody, then do it, and then disciple the fat students. Faithful, available, and teachable. We're discipling people that want to be discipled, right? Isn't that kind of freeing for you a little bit, that you don't have to force someone to do anything? You're discipling people who have responded to the message and who are saying, I want that, okay? So Jesus, it's faithful, available, teachable. So Jesus did this. He had 12 disciples who were obviously faithful, available, and teachable. He spent a lot of time with them. He had an inner three. And I would just say on there, I think you guys have it. It says, it's because we love the masses that we focus on a few. And I'm going to pause here. It's a strategic use of your time, okay? So we think, well, we got 42,000 students at IU. What are we doing, having me spend time with 3 people? There's so many people out there that need to be reached. I mean, I would want to ask Jesus the same question, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing spending all your time with 12 people? And then just kind of preaching to everybody else and that kind of stuff, but you're investing all this time into these 12 people. People would be asking, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Well, then I don't think anybody has any question now what Jesus was doing at the time. And I hope that you guys are starting to recognize that the best way for us to reach the masses at IU is to disciple the few. And I hope that you can look around and see, oh yeah, I guess that's true. Because if we were trying to go out and reach the masses, we wouldn't even have this many people in the room. And they wouldn't have the level of depth in their relationship with God that you guys have, because we wouldn't have been able to spend the time to do it. So I just want to encourage you with that it's okay for you to not go crazy, killing yourself trying to meet with 1,000 people, because you're going to end up hurting things in the long run. Because you're not only are you not going to be spending enough time with people, so it's going to be spread so thin that you're not really able to impact or influence anyone. So relationship will be easy. When you do this, there's less walls in these relationships with faithful, available, teachable. There's more health. Content will be eagerly received, digested, and applied. And you can challenge them with more responsibility. I want to address something when you guys are done filling that in. Some of you guys are people that do not come from a strong discipleship background, okay? You may not know the Bible like the back of your hand, for example, okay? Like, Tanner could probably tell us a lot about the Bible, okay? But if I went around the room and asked a few questions, some of you guys might be like, yeah, I don't know that. Okay, that's okay. You know what's going to happen is you are going to have people in your group who do know that. And I know that for some of you, that could be the most intimidating scenario, is that you're supposed to somehow disciple people that know more than you. That's hard. What I want to tell you is faithful, available, teachable people can learn from anyone, okay? So I'm not putting any pressure on you to be something that you're not. I believe that what you guys have in you is an understanding of what we're doing at Chi Alpha and what real devotional life, real community, real responsibility looks like. And I'm expecting for you guys to be able to pass that on to someone else. So please don't be intimidated by that. Don't be taken back by that. I would say that in any scenario, because you do have something to pass on. I think in general, faithful, available, teachable people are humble people that want to learn, people that want to know and can learn from anyone. So just don't, I don't want to say this in a non-compassionate way, okay? Everybody needs us. But there is more than one type of not fat person, I guess. And some of them are Christians with that background, but they're maybe too prideful to hear something from someone. And some of them don't come from that background. and maybe just don't care. But all of it's the same. What I want is you guys to invest in people that want to be invested in. Okay? So what I'm getting at is let that pressure come off of you a little bit, okay? And know that God put you here for a reason. All right? I just wanted to pause and say that. Shepherd the other students, or pastor the other students. You could put either one there. In the blanket's more pastoring underneath it. Probably wish you put shepherd now, but more listening and counseling. I think it's, hold on a second. Yeah, more listening and counseling. Less content. It's more about time. Focus on helping them take the next step to knowing more of Christ. So you're still meeting with these people, but if you go in and say, we're going to do a Bible study, it's like you might not meet with them ever again because that may not be what they're ready for. What they may need is just relational connection. Okay, just be wise about it. Understand that there are different things for different people. The people that are faithful, available, teachable, you may be able to go deeper with quickly, but it's okay to just hang out with people too, okay? And also do it a little bit less often because you have to be wise with your time. So meeting with peers or older students. This is addressing the point that I mentioned earlier. 1 Timothy 4:12. And this is similar to those of you that may be dealing with people who you feel like are more knowledgeable than you. But it says, don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in life, in love, in faith, and in purity. And so the reason I'm telling you guys that, regardless of the type of difficult situation you feel you may be in, the ones that I mentioned, is because he's still encouraging you, you know what, just set an example. You know, live a life in your speech, in life, in love, in faith, and purity, where you're setting an example for other people. And other things are going to take care of themselves, okay? You don't have to deal with that. And be encouraged because what you're doing has been done in the past, okay? Timothy did it in Scripture. This is what Paul is encouraging him to do. Spiritual maturity is not measured by age, but by our level of leadership. God has given you the gift of leadership, and the staff at IU or wherever you are has affirmed the calling in each of you. It won't look like big brother, big sister, but more like close friends. You guys need to receive that, okay? That it's not like your ability and gifting and all the things that's there. It's that I want you to be a core group leader. I trust you to be a core group leader, and I know that you're going to do a good job, okay? And so it's not by spiritual maturity. It's by the leadership that you've been given and that's been entrusted to you. And I believe God's going to do some awesome things through you for that. So the next thing is aim for weekly. We worded that carefully on purpose, okay? Aim for weekly. Some of you guys that have 3 people in your core group, it may be a little bit easier. But I think the weekly is really good, especially for the faithful, available, teachable people. One-on-ones versus my goodness. One-on-ones versus 2-on-1s. Sometimes your schedule might not allow for a weekly one-on-one with every guy or girl. So there are times that a 2-on-1 or 3-on-1 would be a good way for your core group members to grow together and encourage one another. So remember we talked about hub to web. This is another way to do that. But it's also another way, and I'm not saying, I think we got a little bit too much in the 2-on-1 and 3-on-1 last year. It was good, but I think that there's so much that happens in a one-on-one that's different than that I want to encourage you guys to do that. I want to encourage you to do one-on-ones, but just you can mix it up from time to time. But the biggest thing is, well, we'll get to it in a second. But anyway, it's a good way to do that, especially with people that maybe are just part of the group. They're not like right at the heart of the group, but they're there. Use judgment. Make sure that members that you're pairing together for a 2-on-1 would be compatible and comfortable with each other. So let's talk about scheduled versus not scheduled. It's good to schedule your meetings so that your students can give you a place in their busy schedules. We know that they're busy. We know that you're busy, okay? So understand that scheduling things is important, okay? I know that as sophomores in college, it's like you're starting to learn, I will forget if I don't write it down, you know? That's not an old thing. I think that's just like when you add things to your life, you need to be more responsible with it, and this is one of the things that you're adding. It's good to schedule your meetings so students can give you a place. So the blanks there, a regularly scheduled time and place increases your chance of meeting up with the average student. It's really practical, but it's really true. A regularly scheduled time and place. That's why you have your core group at the same time every week. If we change the core group time every week, it'd be a disaster, okay? So keep in mind, that's how it is with one-on-ones, too. It's good. Every Monday, I have lunch with Kevin and Wright. I'm saying, if I'm in his core group. But, you have those kind of things, and the students grow to look forward to that, I think. And it's kind of a cool thing. So, anyway, one-on-ones can be more than just scheduling coffee time. They can and should often be spontaneous and flexible. Spontaneous and flexible. Include your students in your daily life. All right, so what is your role during one-on-ones? You are setting the tone of the one-on-one as being a time to encounter Jesus, and you're providing purposeful direction towards him in your conversation. Some of you, you haven't taken that step, and I'm talking to all levels here. You haven't taken that step of that being a natural part of your everyday life. I'm saying begin to force that, okay? Pointing people to Jesus, which means you need to start pointing yourself to Jesus more and more and more, and you're gonna see that you're gonna grow a lot here too. But also remember that you are not a psychologist or a professional advice giver, if that were a thing. You don't control the conversation, but you instead actively listen. Your conversation should be intentional. Ask questions and affirm the answers. Validate their questions and answers. Seek to understand them through. It's obviously the end. Seek to understand them through Jesus' eyes. Don't judge them. Before you give your own advice, go to the Bible with them. It's a real easy thing to do. It's easy on both sides, okay? It's real easy to give your own advice pretty quickly. But it's also an easy thing to redirect to the Scripture. Apply biblical truth and help them practically understand how to bring Jesus into the situation/decision. So the goal of the one-on-one is to move them closer to Jesus. The best way to challenge people to move toward Jesus is to help them reach the right conclusion on their own. What does that mean? What would that look like? Hey, you don't always tell them what to do, because they're more likely to remember it if they experience it on their own. So Jeff says he asks the question a lot, what do you think Jesus would want you to do? Which I think it's like you know what I'm saying? That is a redirection right there. That's what I'm talking about, is you're pointing the conversation to Jesus. You're not pointing it to Jeff. And hopefully you're asking with the right motive, like, I know what Jesus wants you to do, but what do you think Jesus would want you to do? You're asking them to think about, is Jesus Lord of your life, and is he guiding your steps, and what do you think he wants you to do? And I think, obviously, now it's not, what do I think I should do? It's what does Jesus think I should do? This could be done by asking purposeful questions that could expose weaknesses in a thought or plan, or help them think through the implications of an action. It can also be done through sharing stories of your own life. Be vulnerable in this scenario too. If you have been in a similar situation, talk about it. Share how Jesus redeemed it. If you can relate to something, then do it. You're always trying to find these connections, okay? Remember, you are pointing them to Jesus. That's that blank there. You're pointing them to Jesus. I love this. Be aware of your body language during the one-on-one. Like, you want to be there. Okay, like be aware of the fact that you're yawning while they're sharing their life story, things like that. Just know everybody's yawning now. Both Smiths are yawning. Joe. Yeah. So he's saying, like, understanding kind of what we talked about, that people are going to be at different places. And so how do you keep things centered on Christ when someone who maybe hasn't accepted Christ? Or I'm not saying they're not interested, but they could fall anywhere on that spectrum maybe. And I think it's a good question. I think it goes back. I'll answer it one way first, even though I think you already know this. Is the difference that we're talking about between faithful, available, teachable, and the people that are a part of your group, that it's okay to just spend time and let these people know that you care about them and that you're their friend. That is keeping it centered on Christ, in my opinion, that you are talking about this. One thing that Rick Warren says that's always stuck with me is in like participating in mission, what it means to do that. He always encourages his people that are in his congregation. He asks them, what do you love to do? So what are some things that you guys love to do? Play Call of Duty, okay? Volleyball? What? Disc golf? Euchre? Lift weights? All right, he's saying, what do you love to do? And then he says, do that with lost people. And it's great. If you love watching football, then go watch football with somebody who's not saved, okay? So, because eventually, what he was saying, what happens? Eventually, as you develop relationships with these people, there comes a point of crisis in their life where there are natural bridges for you to share about Christ. And so what I would encourage you to do is develop relationships with people over time, and don't put pressure on that relationship. When the opportunity arises, don't be afraid to share it. Don't be afraid to go there, okay? Your core group, these guys know that you're a Christian, more than likely. If you're meeting with them, they know that. So they're not there. I'm just saying, don't put pressure one way or another. You know, I think that asking questions that are guiding questions, like, what do you think about faith? Obviously, you know I'm a Christian. Like, why do you hang out with me so much? Yeah, I think that's a valid question with somebody who's hanging out a lot with you or whatever. You know, is that okay with you? That, you know, and what do you believe? You know, like, what are your thoughts? I think that's an okay thing. It's like they're in discovery mode somewhat. So I think there's a lot of things that if you guys pursued that I think that's the fun, in some sense, of leading a core group too, is that every situation is different. All these people are different, and it's a lot of fun. So you might be having more like scientific discussions with some people, and then some people are like, yeah, I don't want to talk about that. I mean, that's just how it is. It's good. Jordan? Yeah. And so I think that didn't get picked up on the audio, but one of the things I would just say to kind of summarize it and to help is that there are times where, first of all, one thing that she said was that you want to be prayed up for your one-on-ones, meaning like know that you're depending on God in these situations. And then along that line, don't use being led by the Spirit as a cop-out, okay? That's not what Jordan was saying. That's what I'm saying here. Because you can say it's one thing for those things to happen, because I believe God does that. I believe that God knows, and he's guiding us and leading us in these things. But it doesn't reduce your responsibility to be intentional in your one-on-ones and to lead people in your one-on-ones. But you also need to be open to the fact that you could come in with a plan, and from the first sentence, well, I guess we're not doing that today. From the first thing that they say to you, okay? So it says be, in one sense, you want to be flexible that way too, that you can let them take it. Don't always, because you want to be purposefully guiding them somewhere, but just know that is a possibility for you as well in those times. So the question here says, what will these one-on-ones do in my life? Kenji? Somebody raise Sylvia. When I get, that's going to be on there's a little sentence about that on the last page, and I think it is, isn't it? Maybe it's just mine. Okay. And I'm going to talk about that because I think that's a carryover from last year that is pretty close to the same thing, but it's a different resource that we're using. So, what will these one-on-ones do in my life? To be someone who teaches these things, it also needs to be modeled in your own life. So use this time as a leader to grow in your own life of personal devotion and prayer time. Learn to depend on God. Learn to depend on God. Not many of you should presume to be teachers, my brothers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. Without a doubt, you will be changed by the people you meet with. That's why I don't feel bad about being super intentional on this side, is because I know that God is molding and shaping us on the other side. That God is being intentional with us and who he leads us to. And so I don't mind thinking super strategically and thinking we have something to give here, because I also know that they have something to give us as we get invested in that. I can tell you guys this, and I've told you this before, but I've probably gained more from my relationship with Kenji than Kenji has gained from his relationship with me. That's how I feel, and I'm the director of Chi Alpha at IU. Maybe you think that's out of balance, but I'm just telling you, the conversations that we've had have been impactful, and I can point to them back through the history of our friendship. That's good. That's okay, and you're going to see that in your relationships as well. And you probably already do, some of you guys that have been down this road before. Without a doubt, you'll be changed. You will grow. You will learn new things about God from their perspective. You will see a growth in your prayer life because you need it. You will gain new friends. You will impact the kingdom in the most powerful and effective way out there. So rejoice, because it's an exciting season. Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Deuteronomy 31:8, the Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Okay? I don't have a problem reading that in this context, because it's all the way through Scripture. This is what God does. He goes before us. He walks with us. He calls us. So I put on here, even though it's already, I think it's at the bottom there, it says one-on-twos are a great option too, and I was just reiterating the building the web thing. But on the last page, it says important. Everybody look at their green books. Obviously, none of you have green books, so the first 6 weeks of one-on-ones take 15 to 20 minutes at least to talk about that week's green book lesson. Very casual. Let the conversation, go where it goes. Incorporate what you've learned here into how you approach the green book. So we're not doing the green book, okay? So no more weird 80s references, and those of you guys that did it. It's like a 37-chapter book or something, and it's great, and it was a good resource. What we are going to use this year, this is bad. What was the name? 1-to-1, yeah. So that should be easy to remember. The cool thing about it, we bought about, how many did we buy? 50? Yeah. So there's an iPhone and Android app for this, and so it's called One, like ONE, 2, the number 2, and then 1. Every single core group leader and every single person who's helping in a core group, is that on there? So it just didn't get changed on mine somehow. Okay, mine doesn't say 1-to-1 at all. So it should say 1-to-1. So all I'm saying is whatever is said about Green Book there, I want it to be 1-to-1. Here's what I did. Some of you guys I know are still living in the 5 years ago and you don't have a smartphone, and that's okay. And some of your students won't have a smartphone. And so we have these books that we bought. We bought 50 of them. Okay, they're like $3 a piece. We thought it was a good investment because not everybody has a smartphone. And I know that none of you have access to it right now because there's no internet anywhere nearby. I'm saying to download it. And it's like a 7-chapter thing. What's great about it is it puts everybody on the same page. You know, one of the first few weeks talks about lordship. Anybody know what the word lordship means? Can tell me? What? Say that again. It's basically who is the Lord of your life, which is, I mean, that's a good question. And so we're talking about the lordship of Jesus in your life. What does that mean? It means how much is Jesus influencing your decision making? What a great topic that we can talk about with anyone, regardless of their level of connection with God. That's one of the first few weeks, but it's also a great conversation to have with somebody who's a new Christian. And so you have all of these things. That's why we want to start with this in your one-on-ones if possible, and then grow from there, because we want to see where everybody is, and we want to let the conversation go where it goes. But I think you'll really like this resource. It's a lot more current, and I just think you're going to really like it. You need to get it, and we'll talk more about it in the peer teams, so we'll follow up with you on that. So have that ready and keep that in mind as we go forward. So what I wanted to do. So you see this here? This is an awesome thing if you actually use it. It's a calendar for you and your core group leader to write out what's going to happen. So week 1 through week 6, you guys could sit down and plan out week 1 through week 6 anytime you want right now. And you could have it all on here and kind of what you're going to do, and you use that as a guide. And you can use that. Actually, it goes beyond that. So all the way through week 12. So that's going to be almost a full semester, right? And then facilitating small group sharing. There's some resources there. Let's go to the next page. These are ways if you are praying in your core group that you can be praying for people who don't know Christ. You can actually use this as a resource. I know Luke did this in their core group last year where they all had a person that they were praying for, I think. And this would be an awesome thing to go find this resource, print it off for your core group, give it to them, and let them write that name in there and just pray those things together. All right, so these are some other things as far as like how to, I believe this is a one-on-one resource there. Keeping track of your one-on-ones. If you're like super organized, which I think I heard Anna talking about wanting things like scheduled out and that kind of stuff. This is an amazing resource. I wish I used stuff like this more often. But my brain starts exploding when I get into too many squares and stuff like that. But I would say if you can use this, use it because it's a great resource. You got different topics and verses connected to it. So if you're dealing with a specific question, this is a good thing to go to and find a verse that connects to it. Discipling objectives, you can read through that. Things that you want, these topics, these different things that you want people to be dealing with in their lives. It's really good stuff, by the way. And this is just like the beginning of the resources that we have available for you guys. Mentoring, so these are, before you meet, choose a few questions to purposefully ask. So there's obviously a ton of things. How are you doing with classes? That's an okay question to ask. Okay. In fact, it's encouraged. Have you been honoring, understanding, and charitable in your important relationships this week? Have you been exposed to sexually alluring material or allowed your mind to entertain inappropriate thoughts this week? You might not ask it that formally, but you know, I mean, when you guys are in a relationship with people that you're close to, I hope that you get to that place where you can ask accountability type questions, especially if they're offering that to you and they want you to be that. And there's going to be students who do want that from you. So the ABCs of ministry, this resource, you assess the need. I'm sitting down with Sarah and she's telling me I have this horrible thing happening in my life and I need help with it. We assess the need right here. We build a biblical foundation of how to deal with it. We create goals, develop a plan of action, and we establish proper support. And the cool thing about it is the next page has all of the explanation of what that looks like. But it's cool because it's like, okay, we talked about your problem, but where are we going now? You know, how are we going to allow God to do something here? So anyway, I just wanted you to know that stuff was there. And like I said, we'll put it on the website and we'll make it available to everybody, the extra resources that we have as well. All right, so I want to take like a 2-minute like stand-up stretching break, and all I want to do at the end here is just ask and answer some questions. Nothing crazy. If you guys need to run to the bathroom real quick, that's fine.